All right, man. Well, what's up? Welcome. Thank you very much for coming over.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. This is amazing. Fucking. I've been listening to the new Soft Deadlines album. It's really, really awesome. Really good time.
Good. Well, thank you.
Definitely
Glad
dig
you
it.
like it.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask about it is it definitely listening. There is a contrast between the first album and the second album. For sure.
That's fair to say.
Yeah. So what do you think the primary catalyst was for the change between the two albums?
It had a lot to do with just what we were listening to and what we wanted to emulate in the time in between, because I discovered a band from Canada called Mets, if you're familiar
I know
with
Mets.
them.
Yeah, Mets is fucking badass.
Yeah, they're a great band. One of the best live bands I've ever seen, in fact. And I just love the simple, incredibly heavy and repetitive in a good kind of way thing that they have going on. So I wanted to incorporate a little bit of that. That's part of what made the sound skew a little darker, a little heavier this time. Because of that influence on my writing. Also, completely different personnel this time.
Okay.
The lineup that I recorded Critic with just does not exist anymore. We are now a 4-piece, and I am the only member in common between the two records. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, but the guys I play with now are really great. I like the chemistry a lot. But, their personal influences did kind of bleed in because we wrote this record more collaboratively, which is another difference. I wrote 90% of Critic myself, pretty much. I mean, the other guys came up with parts, but I had the songs, laid out from beginning to end, like when I brought them to the table, basically.
Okay, that's really cool. I can feel it. I guess I can see that. The first one's great, and they're both great in different ways, but the second one definitely has more of a kind of... It does feel like each instrumentalist is bringing a certain personality to the table.
That's very true, and I really like that about the new record, because a lot of songs turned out like I just would never have anticipated, I guess, how they were going to turn out.
Yeah.
Because somebody thought of something that I would never think of, but it worked perfectly, and that's been one of the greatest things about my collaboration with these guys. It's just the surprises that come from combining our different sensibilities.
So do you think you do most of the writing like during the initial writing process between the band, or does a lot of that come during recording? Because with me, I know, but we also have the freedom of doing it ourselves. We record everything ourselves, so we don't have to worry about the engineer being like, okay, well, you guys only have this much time, or whatever, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I don't know where you guys are coming from as far as recording goes, but...
Well, we mostly... we had the songs pretty much 100% written when we started recording, and we had to because we were doing drums and bass at a STEM. We could only afford about 2 days of studio time, and we just knew... That's all right. Yeah. We knew we were going to spend about 2 days at STEM recording up in Paradise Valley, getting down the drums and bass, because that's a great place to record those things. And then we figured we could probably handle the rest of it ourselves, the guitars and vocals, which I think turned out pretty well just with home recording. So on that part, I know, like, Chad, who's our other guitarist, did write some of his parts in the studio, like the overdubs, a lot of the lead guitar lines on this new record are stuff that he came up with on his own, just experimenting. Because it was at his house that we did it, and he actually mixed it there as well. Okay.
I'm trying to think of the first time that I heard about you guys. Might have been... Did you get any write-ups from Mitchell Hillman? From Java Magazine or the New Times?
You mean this time around, or with the previous record?
I think it's Critic, is the first time that I heard of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did... Mitchell Hillman wrote a review for Java.
Okay.
That's what I thought. One of the one-column reviews.
Yeah. Same here.
Which, yeah, I think that was probably our first review, like in a print publication.
Same.
And I think Yab Yum wrote about us too at the time. We got a few other press mentions over the next few months, like some stuff from the New Times blog, and I can't remember offhand who Serene Dominic writes for, but I know he wrote about a show of ours.
Okay, that's cool. I don't know that name. I don't know everybody. I barely know anybody. I know Mitchell Hillman because he knows everybody, and he just makes it his mission to listen to fucking everything and like everything. Like, he really... A lot of writers you can hear were just kind of, I need some content, so I'm going to talk about this in a positive way, but I don't really care. You can kind of tell almost sometimes a falsehood, but with him, it's always very passionate and stoked, and I really like that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, he is excellent at his job.
So you're talking about Mets. Mets, I started listening to them a couple years ago because I started experimenting with noise, which was never a genre that I was super into. I only ever really scratched the surface with it. But when I heard Swan's Filth record, I was like, oh, fuck, there's some really crazy, weird shit that's brutal. Because that was the thing with noise music, which for me is it needed to be percussive as well. I needed like a banging kind of harsh brutality.
Yeah.
And that's when I discovered Mets. I was like, oh, fuck, this is like almost kind of punk too in a weird way.
That's the perfect thing about Mets is like the brutality and also how everything... I don't know. They know how to all accent the same beats so that it's like three instruments working together in a way that sounds incredibly simple but is really forceful.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of the records around, but I haven't gotten any, unfortunately. And I saw. I think I think you're wearing a Met shirt in one of your pictures on Facebook, right? One of the profile pictures. I think so.
Most likely.
Most likely, yeah. I haven't seen them. When's the last time you said you saw them? It was fucking amazing. I've never been to a concert like that before.
No, it may be the best show I've ever been to.
Really? Where was it at?
It was at Crescent. It was over a year ago now. It was August 2015, I guess. They haven't been back since. Yeah. Because I would definitely have gone.
Yeah, that's fucking rad. So, well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was so on Facebook, I remember you mentioning a lot of bands that played like huge roles in because there's one of those stupid like things where everyone was posting like their favorite albums and stuff like that. And I remember like looking at all of your favorite albums or like important albums or whatever, and being like, that doesn't sound like fucking Soft Deadlines to me for some reason. Like I like Maybe I'll Catch Fire was on there, which is one of my favorite records of all time.
You know, you may be thinking of someone
else's
somebody else because
fuck, I thought I was
who is that?
Huh?
What was the album you said?
Maybe I'll Catch Fire.
I never have really
God damn it.
listened to that.
I was literally like, while you were on your way over here, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's him. And then I was like, if it's not him, it's going to be awkward. And here we are.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. It's hard to keep it straight.
It's hard to keep it straight, yeah. Especially when like half the people on my Facebook are all people with guitars.
Well, right. And how many people do you know that you talk about music with? Like, you're going to differentiate all the time.
Yeah,
it's like
for
pretty
sure.
tough.
So one of the things that I really want to talk about is I saw on your Facebook, because like before I have a guest over who I don't know, I like do a little bit of creeping just to see like what they've got going on, things that I can bring up and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I saw your fucking like travel history is crazy, and your school history is fucking nuts.
Yeah, I did go to quite a few places.
Yeah, like I want to talk about that because like you said, did you take French in France or something like that?
Yeah, I went to the University of Po for a year. It was like kind of an exchange program. That's a town in the southwest of France. Okay. And pretty much just took language and culture courses the whole time. It's great because you also get to practice since you're living there, just be somewhat immersed. So I learned a lot in a relatively short time, which, I've kind of forgotten a lot of it now. Yeah.
What was like? So I haven't been to France, and people have told me a lot about it. Half the people I've met have told me that all the people are assholes, but I always think that's kind of stupid because I feel like I remember someone saying once like French people think Americans are assholes because Americans are assholes half the time, so they're just responding to that. Like,
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think all people, when traveling, they kind of arrive with this expectation like, well, this is going to be just like home and have all the same stuff that home has. And then they, take it personally that it's not that way. Mm-hmm. I think people from any nation or culture like might be guilty of that, but I think Americans are especially bad about it. Particularly, I don't know. I don't want to generalize about regions too much, but I think people from the South are pretty bad about that.
Yeah, people from the South are really bad about that. I mean, I'm from Ohio. People like, and Ohio is one of those weird states where it's not Southern, but it's not completely Midwestern either. Mm-hmm. So it's very kind of, you get both. And it's just a flyover state, really. But the ignorance, like, because I would go to Kentucky and shit like that too, and it was all like the same amount. And no one was interested in going to another country. No one was interested in traveling really. If they were interested in traveling, they were talking about going to Florida, which is just as bad as a lot of the South all half the time. But that's the thing is, like, I've always wanted to go to Europe. Like, my girlfriend like backpacked on Europe for a couple months, and she said that France was rad, but she said there is a culture clash for sure. The people are very different.
Yeah, I think that's really the origin of most of those complaints. Like, oh, the people there are assholes. Well, they're just different from you. They have a slightly different standard of politeness and what constitutes. I mean, I think people in France, like, by and large, are quite a bit more hospitable. Like, they place more of a premium on like what they can offer to a guest than Americans necessarily do. Like, of course, I'm generalizing.
Well, no, yeah.
But
so, are Americans then like?
But they don't smile. That's one thing.
Really?
Like,
Maybe that's what it is. Americans are so used to that.
I think. Well, even like between someone from the South and someone who's like from New York. Like, there's a cultural difference there. Like, Southerners think that New Yorkers are cold because New Yorkers don't smile unless they have a specific reason to smile. Smiling's just not an automatic thing in some cultures. And if you come from one that is, then you end up feeling a little bit frozen out by a bunch of people that you're going to meet in a country like France.
That's so interesting. I never thought about that.
But it's not actually intended.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I've never thought about that. I've never thought about people... Because that's the thing with here, I never really paid much attention to it, but I remember my mom, when I was growing up, being like, that fucking bitch Rachel down the street didn't smile at me when I smiled and waved at her. And it's one of those things of like, I mean, okay, I guess I get it because of the cultural norm, but at the same time, I never thought about that. You kind of take that for granted, how smiling is a cultural, that's just kind of like shaking hands or anything else. It's very much the norm. It's how you greet people. It's, you know what I mean? Whereas like in other countries, like people will kiss on the cheek or whatever. Here it's very much like smile and wave or shake hands or whatever else. So where were you staying for that time?
I lived with a host family.
A host family? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's like something set up by the school or?
Well, it was, I went as part of this program. It's offered by a company called USAC. They're just a company that offers study abroad kind of packages. They help you find a school and a place to live and all that kind of stuff. I can't remember what the acronym stands for anymore.
Sorry.
But they placed me with a family, it was like an older couple whose children were like, they were all grown up and in college. Mm-hmm. But they had a little sort of apartment attached to the house. It was pretty cool.
So did you become close with them then, or is it just kind of cordial, not talking to them very often?
It can go any number of different ways.
Actually, what was it like? Like, how did it go for you? Like, was it smooth?
It was reasonably smooth, but I don't feel like we got close. I felt like there was a little bit of a wall there with these particular people, and I don't know. And I have heard other people comment on that, like, it's easy to make acquaintances with, generalizing again,
course,
but it's easy to make a lot of acquaintances, like living in France, but it really takes an investment of time if you want to get close with people. Like, they don't open up too readily.
That's
lot of them.
That's weird. Okay, I would have never thought about that. I guess that's why I'm asking questions. I would never have thought about that with French people. I would think about that with maybe like Russians, who are just just seem like a very kind of brutal bunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a rough life.
Yeah, it's just really fucking rough.
Many generations of a very rough life.
Yeah, so you did that, and then what age were you at that point?
It was basically my junior year of college, so I was like 22.
22, okay, cool.
I wasted a little bit of time during my college years. I think I graduated in 5 or 6 years, with a 4-year degree. Okay, gotcha. I was just, and it's not like I wasn't motivated, but I tried out a lot of stuff. I didn't know what I want to do.
Yeah, that's where I've been working since I got out of high school. And I've always gotten wrapped up in so many creative things or so many other things that by the time I was like I'm in my early 20s, I was like, shit, like all my friends are graduating now. Like, it was one of those weird things that, like, because I'm 23 now, and I never really had a whole. It was one of those things where I didn't realize, and I was thinking about this the other day. None of my friends growing up went to college, and my family didn't go to college. So it was this thing of this is normal or this is normality or whatever. And then I started to make more friends. And like I always had a small group of friends, but now that I'm in a band and I'm playing all the time and I'm meeting people all the time and I'm more outgoing than I used to be, I'm starting to mingle with other people, my peers. And they're all like graduating college now. And I was just like, oh shit, that was a thing that I was, I forgot I was supposed to do that.
It's, I mean, I really enjoyed college and I learned a lot and probably am a better person in some ways, but I don't think it's something that everyone should do or has to do. Because it cost me a lot of money. I'm in a lot of debt from it, and I don't really have anything from it that I can. What am I trying to say? I mean, the skills that I learned in college aren't particularly marketable, so I'm not getting any return on all the money I invested. Gotcha. And when it costs as much as it does, like, you do have to look at it as a financial investment.
Of course, I think. Yeah, absolutely. If you're gonna, fucking tens of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, just on university, right? Alone, each semester, or each fucking quarter.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I didn't even go to expensive schools, but But it added up a lot. And I think, like, just if you're only going because you want to improve your mind or broaden your horizons or whatever, like, just read a lot of books and like, travel and meet a lot of people instead. It'll be just as good for you. Yeah,
that was my thing. That's what I've always believed, but I was always worried about, like, I want to go to college because I want to be able to get a job that allows me to do those things. But at the same time, not really many of the things that I want to go to college for would pay me a lot in return. Like, ever since I was a kid, I kind of think I always kind of knew, like, none of the things that I'm passionate about are going to pay me unless they pay off really big. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is exactly the case with a band, right?
Yeah, a band or any kind of artist, really.
I mean, actually, I do think there are plenty of bands making, like, a very modest kind of middle-class living by just touring a lot. And I think that maybe didn't exist so much in decades past because there are all these tools now.
Oh, yeah. You can go on the internet. All you need is a fucking internet connection now, and you can book a tour. Do you guys tour a lot?
Not a lot. Not a lot, no. We toured after releasing Critic, like, pretty briefly. Just, like, went to some dates in New Mexico and California.
Yeah.
And then some things happened, lineup changes. We had to recover from that. Then we wanted to write another record, which became Go Dark. And with that out, now we're starting to think about playing a lot more out-of-town shows. We have some dates in California that we're working on setting up right now for April.
Sweet.
And I haven't talked specifically with the guys about this, but I intend to, like, try and book some more, maybe some longer times out of town later in the year.
That'd be rad.
Since I have to do it myself, like, it just takes a really long time, you know, in between. And I don't have a ton of experience. I just booked the one tour that we did before.
Yeah, it's all about, like, the more you do it, the more people that you meet, and the easier it becomes to do it. You know what I mean?
And you learn a few things not to do as well.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, dude. Like, so we went on 2 California tours, and we're in the process of booking a Colorado one right now.
Nice.
Because none of us have been to Colorado, so we're all really excited to see what that whole thing is about. Hit some college towns and stuff like that.
I've driven through it. It's pretty there. I can tell you that.
Yeah. No, I've heard it's like a Bob Ross painting, which is really why I want to go. That sounds really rad.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
But I think. The thing with tour with us was we got lucky because our singer of our band was in a band before, and they toured in California a bunch, met contacts, and those contacts just happened to end up getting interested in local music business or just music business in general and, like, promotion. So he got lucky with, like, oh, we already know how to do this. We'll help you guys set up shit.
So he knows promoters.
Kinda. Huh? Like, I mean, it's there are promoters, they're amazing, but they're definitely still very much on the grassroots ground level. They're not like
right, not stateside or Psycho Steve or anything like that.
No. It's still it's really just is people who are aspiring to do that.
But that's who you really want to know, in my opinion, because for one thing, I think, like, if you were to go to California, like a band the size of either of ours, and somehow manage to book through an organization equivalent to Stateside or whatever, probably wouldn't do you much good. They wouldn't have you back. It wouldn't make the money they wanted to. And just basically, I don't know. It's just their say-so is not good enough for a bunch of people to come out and see a completely unknown band. The grassroots promotion is the only thing that works.
Absolutely. Especially, I mean, plus when you're working with people who are aspiring, they have more that they want to prove to themselves, and they have more that they want to, I mean, like historically, more to prove to themselves and more to prove to you and everything. And they want to try harder. They're passionate about it. It hasn't become a job yet, so they're only doing it because they're passionate about it. I love that.
And yeah, and I mean, you get something out of it and they do. It's symbiotic in that way.
Yeah.
They get a resume point and so do you, if nothing else.
Yeah, that was the big thing with us is we went out of town and then got a bunch more attention after coming back. It wasn't even that long, but just that, throwing that under our belts, it gives you more stuff to add.
Yeah, and one thing I have found with playing in other towns is that you just get a little more credit kind of in general because you're not at home. They know you traveled to be there, and I think people extend a little respect. They're a little more likely to buy your stuff.
I agree.
Help you out, maybe offer you a place to stay.
I've noticed that too. People have this kind of automatic, not reverence, but the kind of a understanding of how you got there and that you really want to be there, and that you hopefully, if you've done this much for if you've done this much for your music, hopefully that reflects it and that you're good. You know what I mean?
I mean, they're willing to give it a shot. They know you're serious, if nothing else. It's like, I mean, you can go to any bar in any town, see a local band, and they're not necessarily going to be serious. Like, they might not really even have rehearsed enough, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So, like, that's a possibility. With touring bands, that doesn't really happen so much.
Plus,
there's a level of commitment there.
Plus, I think bands try harder when they're on tour, too. Because they're all brand new place, brand new city. Again, trying to prove something. Like, it's not like how you'll just have a show on a Monday night that was not like on a bar to like nobody, and you're just kind of like, you're still trying, but you're still just like, I mean, it's another notch in the bedpost, but it's not a particularly great one. You know what I mean? So, so how long have you been doing it with under the guys or group of Soft Deadlines?
It's been roughly 3 years, a little more than that. But like I said, there have been lineup changes, and that's happened more than once. I really like where we are now with the lineup, really, and I hope for it to never change. Who knows? It could be. But no, a lot of what happened was, like, in the beginning, I had actually never played guitar in a live band before.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I had some getting up to speed to do, and our old drummer hadn't been playing drums that long at the time either. The only member of the band who was like a veteran was our first bass player, and he just kind of, I think, started to see it as a little beneath him. I don't want to like put words in his mouth or anything, but it was just like, he felt like we weren't. It is what it always seemed to me. It's like he felt like we weren't quite good enough to play with yet.
Gotcha.
And I mean, and I can't really argue with that. I don't think we were good enough to play with yet. For a guy like him, he's a really serious musician. So he left because of that. I mean, it's never really been a personality thing. It's always been like whether somebody's showing up and like getting their shit done. Yeah.
No, see, the thing, we're a 3-piece right now, but we've been a 4-piece twice. And both the times, like the last guy who we're still best friends with, he shoots all of our video stuff for us. He's shooting a music video for us next week. He like helped us, like, as we recorded our first album, he like filmed the whole, he's really into filming. He has his nice cameras, so he's like doing a whole documentary thing for it the whole time. Like, it's nice that we got to. That's a good guy to know. Oh, it totally is. Like, we got really fucking lucky with that. But the first one was very much like, he would come up, he would come down, he would practice. He would bitch about going to practice because he felt like he lived so far away. And then he didn't. He'd come there, he'd practice. The minute practice was over, he'd leave. He would only come to shows when we're about to play, leave. Never interested. Never picked up his guitar to practice when he wasn't at practice. Never gave a shit to do the songs or anything like that. It was almost more of being in a band was enough for him. He didn't actually, you know what I mean? Just the idea of, I'm in a band.
He wasn't driven to excel at it. It was more like, just to be able to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a band, man.
Yeah, but the three of us, the thing is, like, we were a three-piece again because it always felt like it was anyway. It always felt like it was us three and then the guitar player who we had to help do this or that or make apologies for here and there for whatever reason. Not because they're bad people, just because the three of us always got it, and it was always the three of us explaining it to that person. Does that make sense? There was always a barrier there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the three of you like really gel as a unit, and he maybe didn't, because that's something I've waited a long time to have. I feel like I really hope we don't have any more lineup changes ever, because I feel like we're finally there where we all sort of understand each other, and and what we produce is kind of more than the sum of its parts. I mean, I could never play any of these songs solo, for example. Like, they're all, like all my guitar parts, like, by themselves just sound like random licks. Mm-hmm. They don't sound like a song. And same with really any other part.
That's the thing with that kind of music is it kind of has that. It doesn't have you can't sit down and play it on an acoustic guitar and play the whole song. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I have very few songs that you could do that with. It's so, the talents of the guys I play with are extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. So were you doing stuff like artistic things or creative things or band stuff before this, like 3 years ago?
Yes, not quite in the same way though. I was, I have three younger brothers, and two of them are also musicians and songwriters, and we used to all collaborate when we were growing up. Like the
Beach Boys.
Yeah, right. And we were, I guess, what you'd call a studio band. It was under the name The Disparities, and we made like...
That's a cool name, I like that.
I think 4 records.
Wow, holy shit.
Yeah, just home recorded stuff. We didn't know anything about production, so when we sent it off for mastering, we found like the cheapest service we could, and I'm sure that all they really did was just like clean up the horrible, like jumbled low end of it to make it sound clear.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like I still like some of the songs we wrote, and that went on for a long time. We wanted to make something of that, but it was just like, I don't know. My oldest brother Julian, he and I used to live together back when I lived in Austin, Texas, and we were like gigging out occasionally as a duo, just like two guys with guitars. Never were really able to get beyond that. And I don't know if Austin is to blame for that, because it is a very, very saturated market, and, good luck looking for people to play with in Austin who aren't looking for something that's about to take off. Like, nobody wants to get in on the ground floor who's a serious musician in Austin.
That's interesting. See, I know Austin has a really cool art scene or creative scene because of the movie Slacker by Richard Linklater, which is one of my favorite movies. And it's very and I know there's a lot of like indie film and stuff like that going, because it's college town, so there's all kinds of that kind of stuff going on there. So how long? Wait, so you just seem like you've been all over the fucking place. Like you've lived everywhere.
Well, not everywhere, but quite a few places. Haven't lived on the East Coast. I always kind of wanted to do that. Okay, but. Yeah, I'm from Canada originally. I was born in Calgary. Lived in Idaho for quite a while. I went to high school there. Bounced around during college. I went to St. John's College in New Mexico, Santa Fe for a year. Back to University of Idaho, then France. I spent a summer in Seattle. Moved to Austin after college, after I graduated.
Okay, gotcha. So what is high school in Idaho like? Is it just really fucking boring? It wasn't Ohio, that's for sure.
No, I grew up in a super conservative family, so the amount of stuff that I was free to do was maybe less than some people anyway. But,
like the kid on the block who wasn't allowed to watch PG-13 movies, like one of those situations.
They let me when I turned 13.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. I knew some weirdos, man. I knew some really crazy conservative families who were like you can't go to the end of the block, you can't go past that cul-de-sac, or you can't watch Cowboy Bebop, or you can't watch you can't watch any of this stuff that everybody else that you are friends with is doing, and now you're the weirdo because of it. And then that person later on in life, like, just becomes like a crazy person. You know what I mean? Like that kind of repression that at least growing up in a Midwest town, I saw there's a lot of repression, and almost all those people ended up on drugs, pregnant. It's like the classic case of like putting someone in a box and then they have to get out. I mean, that's why a lot of porn stars are like ex-Mormons or this, that, the other thing, or the whole idea of the priest's daughter or preacher's daughter or whatever. Like, it's just like you can't. You know what I mean? You can only deny the things that you are natural to you for so long before you just explode. I
would agree with that.
That was the whole thing. People talk about like Boulder and and the people that talk about Colorado, and they talk about Columbine and things like that. Like a similar thing of just like these, like, putting people in a box. You know what I mean? It's like really tragic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that the shooters are largely people who feel they have no outlets.
Yeah.
That
what control and I don't want to say normal people, but like people who aren't inclined to kill a bunch of people, like those controls that we take for granted. Because some people are just like, no, this is the B to my point A. Like, this just makes sense. There's nothing else. Some people just snap and just fucking go black and do it. But other people are like, no, this is what I have to do now. Like, I work at a school I work at a behavior school for kids with emotional disabilities. So I work with it, and it's so interesting to just be like, no, this is what I need to do. Like, I made this list of people who I want to kill, and I wrote it coherently, and I wasn't shaking or pissed off at the time. Like, this is what's going to happen. And it's so interesting, like, it's so fun. Yeah, we had a kid like that before, like last year. It was a high schooler. Just like, no, I'm going to do this and that, and that's the time I'm going to do it. And like, it's just this blankness of, that's only like a tiny percentage of the
What do you, well, I'm sure, but I mean, how do you handle a case like that?
I know it's that he wasn't mine. That was a kid who was in a different department. I work in junior high, so my kids are 11 to 14. Most of the time, they're kids who are from bad backgrounds, a lot of group homes, a lot of abusive parents. We're on the phone with CPS all the time. Kids who just have like anger and aggression and physical violence are the means to an end that they know. That's what was bestowed upon them when they were growing up. That's how they do it, and that's how it's always been. Or their parents just didn't want them or didn't know how to deal with having a child, so their way of living their own life was just letting the kid do whatever the fuck they want, which is really like just as bad.
Just as bad as being repressive, you think, is
I don't know.
No guidance or control at all.
It is. It's almost like they're both extremes. Like, that's the thing, is like I would be terrified of being a parent, because it's like working with kids like I do on a daily, because I'm basically just a teacher's assistant it's like a behavior coach, but it's like I work beside the teacher, and whenever a kid is disrupting the class, then I pull them out and have a conversation with them or do whatever I need to do with that child. It's really rewarding. I love hanging out with them, and that's one of the things where I'm like, maybe I'd be a good parent, because I'm working with the extremes of kids all the time, and I kind of know how to handle it. But there is that idea of like, you have to get that balance somewhat right, otherwise they're going to be too fucked up one way or the other.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone gets it right.
Well, yeah, no, of course nobody gets it right.
I think everyone ends up fucked up in some kind of way by their parents, and that's I'm right there with you, like being afraid of the idea of having kids. That's exactly what I worry about. It's like, do I really want to watch someone else suffer because of things that I personally did to them when they were young?
I know, like, part of me is like, oh yeah, it'd be really fun, and then the other part of me is like, I take for granted how much time I don't have to give to something like that. You know,
you go home at the end of the day. Like, you work with kids, but you know,
say goodbye at 2:30.
Right.
The end of it.
Yeah, I think any relationship that you have with anyone, it's easy to underestimate. It's easy to underestimate the strain that it. What am I trying to say? The strain of having a relationship is a lot greater when you have no time away from it, or like just no way out of it. That's why I think couples that live together have like, that's when you find out if you can get along or not.
Yeah, totally.
The pressure that's on a relationship like that is a unique kind of pressure when you can't get away. You can't just go home if things aren't going well. And it's easy to underestimate like how hard that will be.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I can't imagine luckily, I got lucky. And when I moved in with the girl that I'm currently living with, we've been together for almost 2 years now. We moved in within 3 months of knowing each other, which is fucking crazy. Like looking back, but we got really lucky because it worked. But it's such a at the time we were like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great, and it wasn't until like a while afterwards when we were comfortable and we had been living together for a while and it was good, that I was like, that was such a crap shot. That could have gone bad so badly, so easily. But I don't know. Still, at the same time, I'm so selfish about my time. I'm such a creator. I'm constantly like, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. I can't imagine like having a kid. I mean, I'm sure like I'm the kind of person where if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, and I'll give it everything that I have. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, right now, it's just like I'm doing the band thing, I'm doing the podcast thing, and I'm just going to do everything that I can and throw everything I can to a wall until it sticks. You know what I mean? And I'm just so obsessive about being able to do my own shit that having a kid for at least the first like 5 or 6 years is like I can't tour. Like I can't do like any of that shit anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, not unless you want to put an awful lot on your partner, which,
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's definitely another factor because I really want to do this. Like, I'm not going to stop short of giving it a real shot because it's the only thing I've seriously wanted to do for most of my life. That's another reason to be hesitant about the idea of having a kid is my point.
Yeah. So what did you master in then? Were you just going to school to be a student, or were you, because I have friends who did that, just went to school forever because they didn't want to do anything else. They just wanted to fucking put it off.
There were elements of that, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was just kind of drilled into me when I was growing up. Like my parents and grandparents were both convinced that you needed a college degree as something to fall back on if you were going to try out any kind of arts career, which they pretty much knew I would, I think. You know, that was never like ambiguous that I was going to do that. So yeah, that's just what they believed. It's like you need a college degree, and I don't know, I think maybe just for people of their generation, like a college degree was just generally a big leg up in the job hunting world. And that's not really true anymore.
Yeah.
So, I went because I thought that's what I was doing, and then kind of discovered when I got out of college that actually nobody really cares that I have a bachelor's in history, which that's what I went for.
Oh, really? Okay. Gotcha. So what did you have any plans of like, I'm going to be a history teacher, or
I did think that I might go that route eventually, like try out the music thing for a few years. If it doesn't pan out, then maybe I'd go back to school, become a professor or something like that. But I mean, actually, Chad, who plays the other guitar in Soft Deadlines, has a similar education, except he has a master's, and he works as an advisor at ASU. And
that's cool.
Anyway, he thought about maybe becoming a professor, and he researched it much more seriously than I did. And what he told me that he learned from that is there's intense competition for like tenure track academic jobs in this country. It's functionally like not any better of a bet to say, oh, my band's going to get famous.
Really? Holy shit. It's like the same, similar odds.
Yeah. I can't remember the numbers he gave me, but there are hundreds of PhDs in competition for every tenure track position there is in the world.
Yeah. So that's not something I think about. Like as someone who who hasn't gone to college, I'm sure I will. I have plans to, but it was one of those things of like, oh, you go to college because you're going to get the old American guarantee that when you get out of college, you're going to be able to do this or that and the other thing. And from one of the people that I've talked to, it's very much, I know a lot of people who went to college for one thing and just end up working at Walmart or doing whatever they can because they can't find anything.
Yeah, I served tables in restaurants for like 4 or 5 years.
Really?
Yeah, my last serving job was actually at an airport bar.
Oh shit.
And I quit last year. It was actually really good money, but in other ways it was good for a while, but it started to get worse and worse. I mean, the culture at that company was about as toxic as it gets. Like, the managers were all just terrible people, and getting worse every day because their managers were terrible people and just shitting down on them. It was an unpleasant place to be.
See, I worked whenever. So I got a job working at a small family-owned answering service for a long time, and I think there was only like maybe 20 people that worked there. It was really small, but they made a lot of money because one of the primary things that we did, like generally we answered whenever like for instance, most of our accounts were doctor's offices. Doctor's office closes their doors at like 6 p.m. and they transfer their phone lines to us. So any patient that calls the office goes to us, and then if there's an on-call doctor who can like give you advice, then we'll take down your information, send it to the doctor, and then we keep track of like who called back, who didn't, yada yada yada, and make sure that you get your call back basically. But we also got hospitals too to help set up patient like new admissions for doctors and stuff like that. So they got a shit ton of money from it, but they only paid us like $10 an hour, $11 an hour. And they paid for it was a tiny building, not expensive, like in Mesa, like, you know what I mean? And I remember at first I was like, this job is awesome because I could just sit down, and the big caveat was after I got good at it, I would just write in my notebooks and take calls at the same time because I got really good really fast. So I was able to have one ear in, one ear out, just like drawing on my notebook and writing, because I liked to write to kind of get all of my, just kind of make sure all my circuits were good and all my wires were good in my brain, you know, and make sure like just kind of reflect on things and all that, stay as self-aware as possible. But during that time, if you look at my notebooks from the beginning to the end, they start out as really like kind of cohesive, and by the end they just look like Charles Manson prison scrawl. Like I'm just this fucking miserable. I hate this. Like I hate.
I see. So like it's right there in your handwriting, huh?
Yeah, it really is. Like it gets more desperate like as it goes along, because I just I just couldn't sit in this fucking gray building all the time and just do the same thing every day. It's like
other jobs too, and it just makes me think that maybe really everything you do in your life has a natural duration, and if you try and push it past that, then you'll start to hate it. Like, you know, some things you need, there's a certain point at which you need to stop doing them. If you don't stop, you're just not going to be happy there afterward.
Yeah, and then that unhappiness and discomfort is just going to eat into everything else in your life. Like that's how it was for me. It just ate away at me. It really made me fucking like the dread of going there, the wanting to leave. But even after I walked out the doors, it felt great, but it still kind of like hung over me for a little while.
And I imagine the thought of going back.
Yeah, every single day, 2 to 10, every fucking day, for 5 days a week. It was really rough.
Then you spend the whole evening trying to forget that you have to go back.
Yeah. Luckily, I never I didn't start drinking until seriously not even a year ago. It was just something like drugs and alcohol for whatever reason never clicked with me. I was just never interested. And it was not something when I was making some kind of political stance. I was just like, I don't really think about it. It's not something that I really need in my life. But now I drink way more, and just like as a casual social hangout thing, it kind of provides this nice social lubricant, especially now that I'm not smoking cigarettes anymore.
Sure.
So, but had I been drinking at that time, I would have become like straight fucking Bukowski, just like every night. It would have been really bad. So, but now, I mean, so you said you were working for Postmates now, right?
Yep.
Which is. That sounds. I've wanted to do that. Is that worth it? Like, is it cool? Is it?
It's. I actually like it.
Yeah.
I mean, the work is most of the time pretty easy and pleasant, and it just I feel just a certain sense of freedom and happiness knowing that I can shuffle my work hours any way I want to. Mm-hmm. You know, if I don't feel like working, I don't have to. Although I really, need to resist indulging that impulse sometimes. But, if I have something that I want to do, I just, work more the next day or whatever.
Absolutely.
And that freedom is that's a great feeling. Even like I'm about as happy as I've ever been, even though it's like just barely enough money. Like I'm pretty poor.
So are you able to get like 40 plus hours a week? Do you have to top off at a certain amount, or can you just work as much as you want?
Yeah, you can work as much or as little as you want.
That sounds amazing, man. Because like Pizza Hut, like I work Pizza Hut as a second job, and it's fine, but I still have to adhere to a schedule, and I still have to do it this way, and it's very, the idea of just like doing whatever I want, wherever I want to do it, sounds really fucking cool. And there's a built-in tip, right? Kinda?
It's not.
Ish.
I mean, I don't know exactly how it works from the customer's end, but the company pays you a little bit per delivery, like $4, $5, $6, maybe more if it's like peak hours. And it's calculated based on the distance you travel and how long you wait, and also I think other things. I'm not sure what all goes into it.
That sounds cool. I don't know. Maybe.
And then on top of that, people can tip, and most of them do. So, and it works out decently if you work busy hours. But the caveat with it is just that there can be some really dead hours. Like from about 2 to 4 p.m. Like it's not really worth it to even be online, and at least not where I live, which is out in Mesa. I think I live with our drummer Parker. Okay. He's one of my best friends, and we're getting ready to like hopefully move a lot closer to everything, maybe to Tempe, because I just feel like I don't want to travel 30 plus minutes every single time I want to go to someone's show or, just hang out with people.
Totally.
It's impeding our ability to be as involved in the
Tempe. I'm just like that fucking bourgeois. Like I love going to like Double Nickel and Stinkweeds and Revolver and all the other homely
small, the really indie record stores.
Yeah, but when I lived in Queen Creek, I didn't have as much access to that, so I was more just relying on Zia all the time. So my friends and I would get off work from that answering service job at like 10:30, and we'd be like, "Oh man, we need to go to Zia," and we're like, "Okay, well, bring snacks because we're gonna make a road trip to Tempe to go to the Mill Apple." And like it was ridiculous. And now I live across the street from it, and I've gone like 4 times since I lived here.
Yeah,
but So what was your first instrument that you picked up?
It was piano.
Really?
Yep.
That's common. I've been asking people that question. A lot of people are saying piano. That's so cool. I wish I was like that.
I mean, I took some lessons when I was about 10. Didn't really like it. Didn't really practice. But as soon as my parents let me quit piano lessons, I kept playing and started playing more and more because now no one was making me do it. Yeah. Now it was like, it just captured my imagination somehow, I suppose. So I taught myself how to play the piano how to quote unquote play the piano. It's not like I don't know any theory whatsoever. I don't even know what note I'm playing when I pluck a note on the guitar. Yeah. But, I just go by what sounds good.
That's so cool. Like piano, I that's how I am with guitar. I took drum lessons for a long time when I was a teenager. So I was like properly trained on how to play drums. And then guitar was one of those things that I ended up picking up just because there was one laying around. Like this pink ridiculous guitar I had was my sister's growing up, and she never played it. So I would fuck around with it and then ended up falling in love with playing guitar that way. But that was all just through tabs. So now that's all I know how to do is play tabs, which is fine. It gets me along.
Yeah, I mean, tabs are available for most anything you could want to play.
I know the basic chords. My notes can be a little. Well, playing bass taught me how to figure out like what note I need to be on. But had I just stuck with guitar, I probably would never known anything but just the basic chords. So when did you move over to guitar?
Well, let's see. It wasn't the second instrument I started learning either. Like I said, I was recording music a lot with my brothers. And the roles we kind of ended up falling into is that my brother Julian was really the guitar player of the group, and I played the keyboards and the drums. He usually played bass as well because, if you can play guitar, you can play bass in a limited fashion.
For sure.
But yeah, I mostly was the drummer.
Okay, that's really cool. I miss playing the drums, man.
Yeah,
I really do. Fun. It was so much fun. It wasn't fun lugging my gear around. But at the same time, playing bass, it's not that much of a difference as far as weight and being a pain in the ass. But I don't have to make so many trips, which is the nice thing. I put everything on top of my.
What kind of amp are you using?
So it's a GK cab, and then I have a Carvin head on top of it, and I just put a furniture dolly underneath it and fucking roll it everywhere I need to go, and I can put everything on top of it and just take it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it looks heavy. It looks really, like a good rig.
Really fucking heavy. There's handles on the side of the cab, but it doesn't matter. It's so heavy that thing is. It's like I've had to carry that with friends before, and even they're like, okay, hold on, I need to take a break. Like it's such a pain, but the head's like just as fucking heavy. So it's a real pain in the ass to be a bassist in that respect. Like Josh, our guitarist, has a 67 Bandmaster, like just all this like nice Fender stuff, and it's so light. Like I could throw the cab in the air with my pinky. Like
Interesting.
It's not heavy at all. The head's kind of heavy, but he has a reverb unit. That thing's fucking heavy and delicate. But
yeah, my guitar amp gives me some carrying problems. I used to play through an AC30.
Okay.
And those weigh around 80 pounds. It's
shit.
It's tough to move. So I downgraded to an AC15, which I actually found was still like plenty loud enough for gigs and everything. And it's a single speaker. It's less bulky, and it's maybe 50, 60 pounds, but still for its size, it's super heavy.
So what do you like about those? Why is that? Why have you stuck with those?
I just really liked the sound I was getting. It was, it was warm and a little bit percussive. Great clarity on the low notes. And also, my favorite kind of amp settings to use are where it's like just semi-dirty. So if you play it softly, it's pretty clean. But if you dig in, then you get some dirt out of it.
Responsive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I find like Vox amps just do that really, really well.
I like
Vox, as opposed to Fender amps, which have more headroom generally. So, you get clean sounds at higher volumes, but I don't like it to be completely clean. Yeah. Just semi.
Yeah. Plus, they're fucking beautiful. Like Vox amps, they look gorgeous. There's something about them that's so aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like I love the kind of old school, very classy look of the Vox amps. And I mentioned the look because I've never actually played one. But I really like them. I knew this. Okay, so maybe you can tell me what this is because I forget what they're called. But when we were on tour, we played with this ridiculous band called Bats and Eggs, and they were this like they came on and they were out of tune. But the thing was, their whole like gimmick was that they were from space, so which gave them so much headroom because you're like, oh, if they're from space, how are they supposed to know how to tune their instruments kind of a deal? So they kind of got away with more. You gave them...
All right.
Yeah. But anyway, he played this Vox guitar that was this weird, like, diamond-shaped plastic thing with speakers, like, inside the fucking body of the guitar itself. But he still, like, plugged it into something.
Huh.
It was this weird, like, white and black configuration. I've never been able to... I think I saw one maybe, like, somewhere once.
It was a plastic guitar.
Vox
guitar?
Yeah, it was like this plastic Vox guitar.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been since they actually made guitars. I know they used to, like, decades ago. But
it's definitely, like, old as shit. But, yeah, that's super weird. Every time I think of Vox, I always think about that dude from Bats and Eggs. It's a weird-ass guitar. But, it's weird when you see brands that make... Like I've seen... Like, Seymour... I had a Seymour Duncan bass cab for a while. And I didn't know that they made
like amps.
So
right.
I was like, yeah, I found it was really old.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it was this old cab from like the 80s, and then I fucked it up by screwing wheels into the bottom of it like an asshole, and ended up like over time just ruining that amp. But it was one of those things. Again, it was so heavy that at the time I didn't think like, oh, you could just buy a furniture dolly. I'm just gonna screw nails into the bottom of it like an idiot, and just fucked it up.
Yeah.
Plus, they were plastic wheels, so they had no absorption. So it's just rocking the rig like the entire time and just knocking shit loose and being a real pain in the ass. That's rookie, just rookie shit. Figured out along the way. But so happy now that I kind of have it down. I really want one of the giant Ampeg full stacks So bad. Those are so pretty, the tube amps.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
I played through one once, and it was the first time I ever played bass through a tube amp before. And that first note, I was just like, it was so warm and so pretty, and just loved it.
And it has a real clarity too, doesn't it? I mean, like it's what I guess like Parker, our drummer, would call springy.
Yeah. Okay.
He always, because he's a bassist as well. Mm-hmm. He was the bassist for Soft Deadlines at one time and switched to drums. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he always uses the word springy, and I think he means something with just clarity in the high end. Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest battle is I'm obsessed about over my bass tone. Like, it drives me nuts. Like, I have to have it perfect, and I finally got the right string. Like, I didn't realize how much my buying shitty strings affected that. I mean I knew that, but I was always like, oh no, these fucking super slinkies are gonna be just fine. But then I was like, I got DR high beams, which are like the longest lastingly bright bass string, and they're not like $60 elixirs, which is nice. Yeah. But still, every time I buy a bass string, I get bummed out because they're so expensive. Anytime I buy bass strings, I get bummed, especially when I look down at how much guitar strings are. Mm-hmm. It's like,
yeah, I just used Adarios. They're like $5.
Yeah, super easy, super cheap. But I'm such a psycho about my bass tone that I have to have a lot of low end, but I also need a lot of treble because I like really, really bright bass tone. That just comes from being in a punk background. Like, we all kind of come from punk backgrounds, but me especially, like, I love punk bass. And the whole thing with punk bass is you need to hear it, and it's always real bright and in your face. And I use that with our music too. I just love really pretty, crisp bass tones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I like fucking around with.
That is nice. It's kind of hard for me to think of any song or record that I really loved the bass tone on, because it's just like you don't hear it done really well that often. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the Mets records, they have a great bass tone for that style, and it's like really powerful and works well with the still post-punk. It's that type of stuff. It's not necessarily particularly heavy, just like kind of angular, a little bit dissonant, choppy rhythms. And those are major elements that I wanted to do something with, which is kind of what led to the first songs that ended up being Soft Deadline songs. But no, with Mets, it was my uncle that introduced me to them. He just happened to see them live in Austin, not knowing what he was in for. Mm-hmm. Was blown away and told me, you need to listen to these guys. And I took heed because he's been going to shows for like 30 years, and he was really excited about having seen this band. And I don't know, I just kind of, what they're doing is something I don't think anyone else ever really has done or anyone else is doing now. It's very distinctive. It's like, in terms of the number of things going on in the music, it's very, very pared down. I mean, it's one guitar line. For the most part, it's one guitar line, one bass line, and one drum line that just mesh in an incredibly, they sound simple, but they sound incredibly forceful too. And they use repetition to actually strengthen the music. Like, it's repetitive, but you don't get tired of it. I mean, you know how there are certain songs where you know something needs to be repeated, and when they keep repeating it, you're like, yes, thank you.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. That's how I am with post-rock, or like whatever the fuck. There's so many different names for it, but like Explosions in the Sky and Godspeed You Black Emperor and Mogwai and all that kind of all that shit. It's like that. It's very repetitive, but it's very, every single song is a crescendo at the same time, but
it creates a kind of a trance-like effect sometimes, doesn't it? That repetition. I mean, I think I don't know. I think that like the idea of spells or incantations, like that, like repetitive rhythmic words can have a magical power. Like, I don't believe that to be literally true, but I know where the idea comes from, and it comes from the same place that makes music work.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely works if you're on ayahuasca or some kind of like crazy thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't say
about that. That's what I've heard. Well, fuck, man. Thank you so much for coming over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that was really fun. You're very insightful, very calming. I'm feeling chill right now. Super like
that's good.
Just kind of matching your energy a little bit. Feeling real chill, real laid back.
Yeah. My stage persona in Soft Deadlines is kind of like the Mr. Hyde version of this, I guess. I'm a very laid back, calm person 90% of the time, but in some ways I can be that because I can get the insanity out by playing music. I channel it. So music's pretty therapeutic for me personally in that way.
That's how I am with horror movies. Like I'm a giant. I mean, as you can tell, I'm a huge fucking horror movie freak, and that's almost like Yeah, I love it. I love all of it. Like this, I'm really in like sleazy 70s and 80s is like my niche, but it does give this kind of catharsis of like this is where all those feelings go. This is where I put them all. This is where I keep them all. That way, I don't have them in my real life. Does that make any sense? It's
absolutely.
Kind of music the same way. But awesome. Thank you so much, man, for coming over. I had a really good time. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Oliver Lemke, for coming over and talking with me. Had a really good time. Really cool dude. Really calming, chill, laid back guy. You know, it was kind of nice to not be just like, freaking out the entire podcast and running my mouth 1,000 miles per second. Soft Deadlines is amazing. Check out their new album, Go Dark. Check out their first album, Critic. Great band. Had a really good time. Oh, whoa, what?